Welcome back to Paris and the Game Inside the Games, presented by Microsoft Copilot. I'm Olympic gold medalist Nastia Liukin.
And I am sport and performance psychologist Dr. Michael Gervais. And together we're bringing you an inside look at the games like never before. Nastia, I had 4 different people yesterday ask me for ticket requests.
I know the feeling. It happens all the time. And for an Olympian in competitions, those seemingly simple requests can actually be a huge distraction, and that can make or break an athlete's Olympic dream. It sounds a little silly, but it truly is the case. And today we're going to dive into how the pull of family and friends can impact an athlete's focus and performance at the games.
It is something that doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but it is one of the main things that we put in place prior to arriving at the games. There's so much happening. Technical, tactical training, physical, mental training is all kind of culminating. And then what is the greatest distraction when we ask athletes when they get here? It's family and friends. Mm-hmm. It's not the competition. They're really good at competing.
And they're ready. They've been training for mentally, physically.
20 years, to get here. And so for athletes, it's work. Mm-hmm. It's game day. It's a work trip for folks, right? This is a business trip. I'll say it again in that way.
Absolutely.
And then for friends and family, this is one of the greatest celebrations, one of the greatest parties. They've been saving up for it. They've been looking forward to it. Maybe with their children, they've been dreaming about it, And so there's a lot that goes into preparing this part of it. And have you had, a personal experience in this when you were competing?
Well, I think I was a little bit lucky because both of my parents had been, world and Olympic champion gymnasts as well. And so they kind of were able to be that barrier a little bit of, I'm the only child. My mom's the only child. My dad, so we really small family. So luckily, I guess we didn't have too many distractions. And then the few, friends that kind of came kind of almost understood. So I think I'm on the other side of it. It's like very rare that happens. I don't think it's normal for people not to like have so many, it's normal to have so many distractions. And so for me, I was so fortunate to have my dad as my coach right next to me. But I will have to say, we weren't really allowed to see our family until the competition was over. And it might sound a little strict or a little crazy to even why can't you see your family? It's the Olympics. Like you said, it's the biggest event.
Well, one of the reasons is because they typically don't come to world championships. They typically don't come to, grinded out competition somewhere on the planet. And so this is really unique. And it is one of the greatest celebrations. And this is a new element to manage. They know what a business trip feels like. Yeah. And it's usually a coach, a couple support staff, and your teammates, and that's it. So now, and it seems like, wait, why is this a distraction? These are the people that have sacrificed for you. Yes. These are the people that have been in your corner for a long time. Check. And there's another thing to pay attention to is that when they come out into the stadium, instead of doing their thing that they're very familiar with, oftentimes they're looking up now for the first time to go find and scan to have a moment of eye contact. And that can be this wonderful wave that washes over and like, my people are here, I'm with you, they're with me, and it can be energizing. It can also be this little I didn't see them. So I missed where they were.
Yeah, so that's an interesting point because I remember my mom, she couldn't watch the competition. She was too nervous, okay?
Oh yeah.
So she would, every single competition, come for the warm-up and watch the warm-up. She wanted to be in the arena. But before every competition, she would ask me, no matter what I said, and I always said the same exact thing, but she would say, do you want me to stay for the competition? And I was like, whatever you want. And I truly felt that way because for me, and again, maybe this is kind of just because my situation was so different, but I felt safe. I felt all the things. My dad was right there next to me. He was coaching me. He was so not once did I ever look up into the stands.
Yeah, because uniquely you had your father next to you, your family member next to you.
But I do know that some other athletes, I know Simone likes to find her family. And that's great if she knows they're going to be there and exactly where they're going to be sitting. But a lot of times somebody doesn't have control over that. So I think it's again, going back to controlling the controllables.
That's it. Yeah.
And if it's not in your hands, for instance, if you don't know that you can have the exact same breakfast for your competition, going into the Olympic Village, what if you don't have whatever it is that you have,
Well,
you know? And it's a
bit of a narrative here is that
Yeah.
the food, I hope I'm not like really kind of being disparaging to the chef, but the food here has been a struggle.
Yeah, I've heard the same.
The proteins.
Yeah.
Like the salad bar has been amazing,
Yeah.
but the proteins have been a bit of a struggle. So I was talking to an athlete that is not consuming enough animal protein. And what this athlete was talking about is that like there's signs showing up that there's a bit of fatigue, there's some muscle bruises that are not normal. And that for this athlete is about ferritin. And that's one of the great sources of ferritin, which is animal protein. So these are small little things that show up that are different from maybe world championships or other competitions.
But imagine it's that your biggest competition of your entire life,
Well,
and that's.
But I'm glad you bring that up because there's a framing. Either you're going to see this as the biggest competition or just another competition.
Right. No, absolutely agree.
And when family or friends are there, if your best mindset is to see this as another competition, the beam width doesn't change, the bar distance doesn't change, the floor dimensions don't change. Like the only thing that changes is that there's more eyeballs watching than before. And for me, my philosophy, this is not all the athletes I work with, my philosophy is I want to keep it the same.
Yeah,
because I know how to do that. And I'm not sure how to do this kind of big hoopla thing. And it's orthogonal to my philosophy of life, which is every moment is the only moment we get. So be great, as great as I can in this moment. And so the other thing that we put in place for this newness, if you will, for some of the athletes is we almost want to take their cell phone away. It's not possible. But did you have this something similar?
So, 2008, I didn't have social media.
Yeah.
So I had the iPhone 1. So it was just, I had like a very basic phone and there was not a lot of distraction. And I think I go back to that. And even in that moment, it felt like there was distraction, but there really wasn't compared to even now.
Now,
I truly don't understand how these athletes can do it. It's the constant chatter and noise but it's also so instant. It's like you finish training, you're on your phone. You finish a competition, you're immediately on your phone. And it's no matter if you tell yourself like, don't read, my dad actually had this rule. I was allowed to, obviously, like you have to give the interviews. I was never allowed to, because this is when like you couldn't go on, any social platform. You had to go on the website and like look up the article. And he had this rule that I wasn't allowed to read anything, good or bad, until after the competition was over. And because it can affect you both ways. If it's negative, like you're obviously, there goes your confidence and like you start, overthinking everything. But if it's good, same exact thing. You can't be overconfident.
But both are the same drug, is that someone outside of the immediate team is providing context or perspective.
Who doesn't know anything about you.
They don't really know. And so that's something that we did at the Seattle Seahawks, like the 9 seasons I was there. It was a constant message that the people in the locker room understand what's happening for this team. They don't know. They might sound like it. They might hit a nerve because there's, but they don't really know. So let's not look outside of ourselves to know how we are doing. Yeah. Look inside to yourself, look to each other, understand and get to the truth. And then that is far more powerful.
But it's so challenging like with social media, right? It's like, I do think it adds a whole different like level of trying to be like block out the noise.
When somebody is struggling, when you're struggling or I'm struggling in some part of my life, it is reflexive to want to look outside for help, for guidance.
100%.
And right now we're in a phase where the Olympic Village is starting to clear out. There is more heartbreak at the Olympics than celebration. Most people don't win gold or silver or bronze. Most people come and have an amazing competitive experience and leave without a PR, a personal record or a personal best or a medal. And so we're now kind of shifting into that phase where there's some heartbreak that's around the village. Anxiety and stress is high. This despair, despondent, frustration, that is so there's a different tone right now than the excitement, the buoyance of the opening ceremonies and the arrival and all of that. And elite competition is about emotional management. How do you use your mind to give yourself direction on where you want to go and the emotions that will facilitate that?
I mean, a great example after winning the all-around gold medal was competing the next day. And I had 3 more days of competition after that. And it was so challenging to stay so laser focused, even more focused than I was before the all-around, because you just want to take a deep breath and celebrate and relax for like a split second, but you can't.
Just a couple episodes ago, Lindsey Vonn said the same thing, that when she won, she was so depleted that her next competition, she didn't have what she normally had.
I remember it so clearly. And my dad telling me, you know, and he knew that too. You know, he wanted to celebrate. He wanted the same exact thing. We'd both been working my entire life for that moment. But now, you know, he kind of put it in perspective, and we all have a different perspective, but the way he explained it was, you're now going out here for the very first time as the Olympic champion. And the first time when I stepped onto the floor, it was the floor exercise finals. And I was not even expected to medal, let alone win. But he said, just remember that. Like, you are now, people are looking at you not just like as somebody that's expected or like that could win, like you are now the Olympic champion.
Wow.
And I stepped onto the floor, and when I heard the announcer kind of say that, like in the arena, that felt different.
How does that change you in that moment? Does that give you energy, or did that create some sort of, it's like a spotlight or a shadow? Did that create?
No, I needed that. I needed to hear that because I was on the like edge of wanting to just relax because I was so mentally, physically, emotionally exhausted. And I needed to hear that.
That's
like it
cool.
wasn't more pressure. Like all the pressure that I had, like it was a different kind of pressure, like that I wanted to live up to, that I felt like this almost like pride and honor to be able to go out there on the floor as the Olympic champion and perform again.
Some coaches, this is your dad in particular, have such wisdom about how to guide or navigate or help somebody experience or add perspective to the experience. And I want to share with you, there's a coach, Fiapo. He has been to, this is his 6th Olympic Games. Wow. And he sends a note to his athletes. The hardest part of focus is not saying yes to your goal. In other words, that's easy, but being able to say no to the many other possibilities that exist. Choose wisely is what he says. And that idea of all of the distractions that are around, all of the internal narratives, you could say yes to 1,000 things, but there are things that you need to say no to. Helps to narrow the focus, getting back to what we've been talking about a bunch, controlling or even mastering the controllables. And you didn't have this, but this is something that we put in place for athletes, is who is going to hold your distraction umbrella? And what does that mean? I was talking about cell phones earlier, is like, is there a point person that can be the person to say, no, she can't, no, that's not going to happen. There are no more tickets. I'm so sorry, she's not available.
Basically the bad guy.
Right. Who is that person that's going to do that? And it's typically like a spouse or a partner, or maybe it's a parent in some cases. And the other thing is, this is a big point of conversation for adult competitors, is when do I get to see my people? They've spent lots of time, money, sacrifice. We're finally at the games. And most coaches want to say, there'll be 1 or 2 days over the 3 weeks.
No, if that.
Yeah. And so for your case, there was adults though are like, look, I can manage this.
Yeah,
and and I think that is, there's a fine line between balancing what the athlete wants and what the athlete needs. And understanding we can't be too rigid, because now there's a confining feeling. We can't be too loose, but finding that sweet spot. These are all things that are done well in advance of the games. And then when we get to the games, they get pushed on.
Right.
All of these boundaries get pushed on because the athletes will go, yeah, I get it. And then when they're here,
right,
like,
they don't
wait,
get it.
Hold on.
I
need to see my
I'm
people.
good. I promise I'm good. I'm in a good spot, and
right.
it becomes challenging. And every single athlete is also so different, but you have to kind of implement the same rules for everybody on the team, so that's also a challenge in my opinion.
Is that how you would do it? You would treat everyone equally the same?
I would, because then it becomes not fair.
Yeah.
It's like being late for a training and they missed their training, unfortunately, but you have to play fair by the rules. And that's part of like the whole Olympic movement, and, playing clean, playing fair, and all of that. I think, again, it comes down to your your head coach as a team and as a country. And I know when you're at a national championships or something, like your individual coach has the rules for you. But when you're representing the country, you have to follow, the same rules that your teammates do.
There's another thing that's taking place right now is the team leads. So this is like the national governing body team lead. So this is an administrator. They are exhausted right now because there are so many on the ground variables that are shifting and changing, and they are exhausted.
Hourly.
And if their exhaustion, if they don't have the skills to manage themselves during this very high pressured hundreds, if not 1,000 micro decisions throughout the day to optimize for high performance, there's two things here I want to say. One, if they don't know what high performance looks and feels like, that's this is going to sound almost like rude, but not everyone knows that language, that tone. And so if they don't know that, then the whole team kind of gets compromised in a way.
Absolutely.
And if they can't manage the emotional experience, then that starts to seep into some coaches and some other administrators. And now they're managing two things, the pressures of the games with the athletes and this other thing. So there's all these buffers.
They set the tone for basically the entire team.
100%. Yeah. And so the fatigue that they're under is really important. So supporting them is incredibly important. And the second thing is all of the stuff that we're talking about ought to be managed well in advance. So if they don't have a relationship with, an attorney or a manager or an agent or a family member that's challenging or difficult, like this is a 4-year process for most teams, right? A quad, as we call it.
Yeah, quad. Yeah, absolutely.
And over that 4 years, if you don't know your people, if the team lead or now all of a sudden
you're trying to get to know someone in the most stressful situation possible.
So this is like probably 2 years in is when I like to suggest inviting people to a world championship or hosting something where we get to know each other. And now the management of it is actually quite
manageable.
It's a lot easier for the distractions.
Right.
Family and friends historically are noted as one of the greatest distractions to athletes.
And the greatest support system at the same time. So it's very much and in balance, it is that balance. And it's hard to be able to find the balance between that distraction, but also knowing that they have sacrificed just as much as you have being the athlete.
And I find this to show up in my own life as well. I love my family, my friends. Like I would not be the human I am without them. And at the same time, the love I have for what I do and the craft I have, sometimes there's a tension there. And some people, when they talk about like work and family, their conversation is, I can't wait to be done with work to get with family. And then I go, I'm a bad family member.
Right.
I love both.
Right.
And I want more time on both. And that's my internal tension and pressure so my commitment, this is what I learned from the athletes and the games highlights it, is my commitment is to be all in where I am. It's not about time allocation. It's about investment in love and that allocation with what I'm actually doing.
So, quick story, Kobe was one of my biggest mentors. And I remember specifically on this topic, he always said, perfect balance. And then he would say, unless you're on the balance beam, is almost impossible. And what he meant by that and what he said was work life and family life. And if you spend too much attention or too much time, in your family, then your work life like suffers a little bit. And if you spend too much time in your work life, then your family life kind of suffers a little bit. Being constantly aware. And if you feel that one is kind of going the other way, put a little bit more time in the other one, put a little bit more energy, put a little bit more thought. And I feel like that's the perfect way to we all try so hard to have and find that perfect balance. And sometimes that just doesn't exist and it's okay. But being aware of where you need to put more time and energy into.
Yeah. Like personally, I'm not sure how your system is set up, but I've been away for about 3 weeks now from my family. Yeah. Like it's hard.
It's hard.
And the athletes are saying the same thing. It's hard. And they happen to be in the same city.
Right.
And they're
That makes it
disconnected.
even, I think, more challenging.
Yeah,
when
it
you're
really
like
is.
so close but so far away. Yeah.
I think that's how so many of us feel in life, you know, that tension between it. And it's heightened here at the games. There's so much we can learn from athletes beyond like how beautiful and strong they look. And like this idea that they're born differently. No, they're going through the same stuff and the courage to lay it out there. You
in front
know
of
this.
Millions of people watching.
And to come up shorter than you had hoped is radical. We have so much to learn because each one of us might not be able to do it. All of us cannot do what you do. Like there's like 3 people in the world or 10 people in the world that can do what you did.
But it's really not even about that. It's about like the overarching purpose and meaning, right? Of succeeding, or I don't really believe in failing, but learning from your mistakes and, you know, to do it in front of millions watching, like that takes courage in itself. You know, like to put it into perspective, imagine that, you know, you're trying to get this new job or this new title and it's between you and somebody else. And, you know, this person that's making that decision is telling you that like the decision in an arena, just you two standing there in front of 20,000 people watching and millions watching back at home, that you didn't get the job, but your friend did.
And everybody watched the interview process.
100%.
Yeah. And they were judging on things that like you didn't do well. It's pretty radical. And I'll take it one step further, which is imagine, so take it out of the job world and put it into the family life. Imagine that the world is watching.
Yeah.
It's dramatic for a moment. I like being dramatic sometimes, but imagine that millions of people are watching and you have to be incredibly honest with your partner about the things that scare you. Well, that's actually what's required for a good relationship. That level of vulnerability and honesty and trying to work it out. And millions are watching how you're doing with the thing that matters to you, because we got to watch you do the thing that mattered to you. And it requires great vulnerability, great emotional management, incredible attentional control, and then obviously the technical and physical, you know, things that flow from there. So this is one of the reasons I love the games, and we're right in the thick of a very emotional phase at the games. Yeah. Family and friends. One last piece and we'll round it out here. Family and friends do not necessarily know what to say.
And there's like
they
never really
you.
I don't know if there's ever a right thing to say sometimes. After
a win, after a loss, and athletes, certainly after a poor performance, athletes are heightened.
Yeah.
And like, do you know family member and coaches as well? Do we give them space? How do we support them?
And I think that's what I mean. Like the athlete might not even know in that moment, right? Because sometimes you've never been in this experience
with a family or a friend,
or ever like
present
at the games,
or
even
at the heightened anywhere. Experience of the games.
Yeah, so you've never experienced these things, you know.
There's a way that you said something earlier, like asking. It is so critically important that we ask more than we tell. And early on, when I'm working with an athlete, is that I say, okay, when it gets dark and you go into the cave, we all have a cave, the emotional cave. When you go into the cave, do you want me to go in there and grab you? It's option 1. There's 3 options here. Do you want me to just wait by the door silently? Or do you want me to wait by the door and let you know I'm here and ping you? Like, hey,
checking in.
Ready to come out? Like, how you doing? I'm here for you. So those are 3 options. Go in, wait quietly, or wait with some checking in. And if you know that about the other person, like if I know that about my spouse, my wife, and if I know that about people I'm supporting, it just makes my job that much more clean. And we've agreed.
Right.
We've agreed.
So
that
you don't
this
have
is
to
the process.
wonder. You don't have to like wonder if you're doing the right thing, saying the right thing or not, you know? And I think that's on both sides, right?
That's right.
It's the communication.
So right now there are viewers and listeners that are supporting their athletes here at the games. And if you could speak right to a mom or dad or a cousin or an aunt or a manager or a friend, what would you say to them?
I mean, I think for me, it was my mom wrote me a card when I left Texas to go to the Olympics, and it was waiting for me when I got back by my vision board, by the medal, and still have it. And it says, "You did it. Love you, Mom." And that was it. she didn't know what was going to happen. But regardless of the outcome, like you did it. Like you went to the Olympics, you achieved your dream. I do think maybe that there was like this whole feeling that she maybe felt that I was going to achieve like a higher dream than just going, putting it by my vision board. But I think it was seeing that when I got back home was her basically knowing that she was going to be proud of me regardless. And I think sometimes like we get so wrapped up in the end result and trying to achieve something or do something, not just for yourself, but for somebody else or other people in your life. And so I think that's what I would say, just to let your athlete, your spouse, your whoever it is that's competing, know that you're proud regardless, no matter what happens. Like you're going to love them no matter what. You're going to be proud no matter what. And I think just hearing that sometimes, like, even if you know it, you quote unquote, we all know that, but like sometimes that's all you need to hear.
Awesome. Unconditional positive regard, accepting the path that's unfolding because you know that they're trying their very best. Beautiful. Yeah. What a great conversation about friends and family and deep focus.
Before we go, we want to talk about our partners. Our AI insights today are brought to you by PwC and Microsoft. PwC elevates your AI transformation with Copilot for Microsoft 365. Hey, Copilot. I've had a few friends show up in Paris last minute and they're asking for tickets, but I don't have any to offer. What are some helpful suggestions for them to find tickets?
Here are a few options your friends can look into. 1, check the official ticketing website linked below. As a pro tip, new tickets are released every Thursday. 2, check official resale platforms. And lastly, you can go check with the Athletes Village information desk to see if they have any leads. I hope your friends find some tickets.
That's pretty funny because that's like no kidding.
Yeah,
like go do your work. This is how it's supposed to go.
So maybe it's like you copy paste or like send the audio.
Yeah, just send this to your family and friends.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mike. That was awesome. It's great to be in Paris, and we will see you tomorrow on the game inside the games.